How's it going, everyone? It's Harvey from Weather Sponge 1000, and in this video we're going to focus on this tropical disturbance that's just off the coast of the Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico and determine how strong it'll be as it approaches Florida and potentially other areas of the southeast, and determine the impacts based on how significant this storm will be as it approaches the Florida coastline. But before I begin, make sure to subscribe if you want to see more weather-related calls. Make sure to like if you like this video, and make sure to turn on post notifications if you want to see even more weather-related content. So let's begin by taking a look at the 5-day graphical tropical weather outlook provided from the National Hurricane Center. And now it's really a matter of when Tropical Storm Alex will develop rather than if, as we have a 90% chance that this will develop into a tropical storm or tropical depression within the next 48 hours, and 90% chance over the next 5 days. So it's pretty much, yes, a matter of when this will develop rather than if, as it's pretty much inevitable at this point. We will see a tropical depression or tropical storm out of this tropical disturbance just off the Mexican coastline, and as you can see based on the track, you see that it's expected to impact Florida this week. And now if we were to take a look at the water vapor imagery, you see that now there's a lot of convection mostly occurring along the eastern portion of this storm, because the low level center is located just off of Cancun, right around this area, and you see that the vast majority of the moisture is along the eastern half of this storm, and it's as a result of the stronger than usual wind shear that we're seeing throughout the Gulf of Mexico. We're seeing strong upper level winds coming from the west, and it's also due to the fact that there's an upper level low that's located right around the Louisiana area that's bringing a lot of the dry air further southward, and it's only going to entrain the storm more into that dry and stable air. So we're going to see this storm look very lopsided as it continues its move on northeastward, but it still will be able to strengthen just a little bit despite the dry air and the higher than usual upper level winds we're seeing in the Gulf of Mexico. But it should at least put a cap in terms of how rapidly the storm will intensify. Don't expect any sort of rapid intensification or any sort of significant, I'd say, hurricane out of this, as it seems unlikely just by the amount of dry air and wind shear we're seeing. But this storm will still be able to strengthen as it heads closer to Florida, so keep that in mind. And if we were to take a look, there is a small amount of rotation. The low pressure is still really trying to converge into one area. It's still a little bit broad, that low pressure system. So once that center circulation really begins to converge and really begins to shrink in size, then that's when we'll most likely see this develop into tropical depression or tropical storm, which should be in the very near future at this time based on how much convection is occurring around the center circulation, especially on the eastern side. Now, if we were to take a look at the current wind shear, as you can see, we're seeing a strong amount of upper level winds right around the Gulf of Mexico, where we're seeing upper level winds equivalent to 40 to 50 knots, which is enough to shear a lot of the higher cloud tops further eastward, which is exactly what we're seeing. And again, that should put a cap in terms of how much this will develop as it heads further northeastward, which is good news. That will prevent it from likely becoming a hurricane, at least between now and until it reaches the coast of Florida. However, this still will strengthen because the storm will be moving at the same direction as where the upper level winds are facing, and that will enhance the winds on the eastern side of that storm. So despite the stronger upper level winds that we're seeing, it's moving the same direction as the lower level winds, which will help the eastern side maintain its wind speed to the point where it could be named a tropical storm, despite the stronger wind shear and the amount of dry air. Now, let's take a look at the computer models. Let's take a look at the Western Atlantic to get a closer view of how this storm will develop as it heads further eastward. So this is how it's looking right now. The European model it is a little bit further southward from where the low pressure is actually located. The low pressure system is located a little bit further northward, but it won't really matter because the storm will still arrive, is still forecasting that it should arrive to Florida. And you see that as it heads further northeastward, we see the dry air become more and more prevalent and pretty much swallows up the center of circulation, where much of the moisture is just to the east of the center of circulation. So as this makes landfall in Florida, whether it's a tropical depression or a tropical storm, it's gonna it won't really feel like you're in the eye wall, because the center of circulation is gonna, for the most part, be completely dry, while much of the moisture will arrive to in Florida well before the center of circulation comes close to the coast. So you need to keep that in mind, that we could see moisture in Florida, especially around the Keys and as far south as Miami, as early as tonight and into Friday morning. And this should continue for the duration of Friday and a lot of Saturday as well, before it makes landfall right around Saturday night to the extreme early morning hours on Sunday. But by Sunday, it should pretty much clear out for Florida for the most part. And while the center of circulation will move over Florida, it won't feel like it at all, because the conditions will look sunny as the center of circulation moves inland, and which isn't anything unusual we see with these early tropical cyclones, because the upper level winds are just very strong during the early part of the hurricane season, which does a lot of the time force a lot of the moisture to be lopsided in a lot of these tropical cyclones that do develop early in the hurricane season, because the westerly winds are still strong and they're still prevailing throughout a lot of the northern Atlantic, which pushes a lot of moisture further eastward. So this isn't anything unusual. And in terms of the strength of this, you see that it won't really strengthen much as it approaches Florida. It's mainly gonna strengthen very slowly. This won't, like I said, this won't be very significant as a result of the stronger wind shear and the dry air, but this should approach Florida as a tropical storm, as both computer models are expecting it. Taking a look at the GFS model, you see the GFS model is expecting the same thing. The GFS model, however, is expecting a track a little bit further southward, as it expects a weaker ridge to dominate the Caribbean and the main developed region of the Atlantic, which is steering it less northward and a little bit further southward. However, for the most part, whether this takes the southern track or the northern track, you still should expect an extreme heavy rain threat for a lot of southern Florida. Pretty much anywhere south, I'd say, of Daytona Beach, that's where the heaviest rain should be. So you need to pay close attention to that in Florida. While this likely will be a weak tropical storm at landfall, the heavy rain threat definitely won't be weak and will likely cause a lot of flooding throughout southern Florida, which is definitely a concern, because flooding is one of the, if not the leading cause of weather-related deaths in the United States. So you don't want to underestimate this storm just because it might be weaker. Now, taking a look at how the upper level winds are looking like throughout the Gulf of Mexico, you see that there's going to be, for the most part, it's going to be under light to moderate shear as it moves towards Florida. But this storm is also moving towards Florida. So the winds, especially on the southeastern side of the storm, southwestern side of the storm, should be the strongest, where the upper level winds and the lower level winds are going the same direction. So that could be a concern for those that are just south of the low pressure system, where we could see strong storm surge potentially throughout southern Florida and into Fort Myers. However, I don't think there's going to be a major coastal flooding threat either, because like I said, this storm is going to be very weak. The wind field won't be extremely large, and while this will develop into a tropical storm, it's not going to be a tropical storm that's strong enough to really create a major storm surge threat. But there's still that possibility of coastal flooding in some areas, especially in the more vulnerable areas. So keep that in mind along at least the southwestern coast of Florida, because that could be an issue for you guys depending on where exactly this makes landfall. But the wind shear should be an issue, but heavy but heavy rain should be a bigger issue for a lot of Florida, so make sure to keep that in mind. And you're probably wondering what will happen beyond Florida. Well, in fact, the storm will actually strengthen quite a bit beyond Florida as it heads further and further northeastward. And you're probably wondering, why is that? Because the wind shear is going to be even stronger as it heads further northeastward, and there's still going to be a lot of dry air that this storm is going to contend with. Well, it's more related to baroclinic instability. That's really going to strengthen the storm as it moves northeastward, so it won't really strengthen as a result of tropical processes. It's going to have some baroclinic instability that's going to strengthen it, so we could easily see the storm evolve into an extratropical cyclone as it continues to move northward. So that's something to keep in mind throughout the as it heads further northeastward. And fortunately, although it will strengthen, it's going to move more and more offshore. The upper level winds are just going to steer the storm well further to the east, so it won't really be much of a worry. And we have a strong jet stream that's prevailing throughout the northern portion of the United States, so it's going to just move likely out to sea. There was a little bit of a worry that the slow pressure storm could come uncomfortably close to the other southeast states such as the Carolinas and Georgia, but that seems less likely at this point, as the European model, even which was the forecast model leaning towards bringing this close to the southeast states, is now leaning more towards this storm moving further eastward, where we do well offshore, where it won't be much of an impact. Let's take a look actually at the precipitation to really see if this rain will come close to the Carolinas. And if we were to take a look at that, we could maybe see a little bit of rain around the Outer Banks, but it won't be anything major for most likely, as it sort of stay just far enough offshore. And you see that it does strengthen quite a bit down to 990 millibars, so we could potentially see a hurricane or an extratropical cyclone that has winds equivalent to hurricane status. So you still need to pay close attention to potentially a high rip current risk this weekend and into early next week for a lot of these southeast states, because this could become quite a strong and formidable storm just off the coast of the Carolinas. While it won't come close to you guys, the rip current risk still exists, so you want to make sure to keep that in mind if you're trying to head to the beach this weekend along the southeast states. So definitely pay close attention to that. But pretty much it seems like the certainty is high with this storm. We're going to see flooding for most of southern Florida, which is a major concern. Make sure to prepare if you're in a flood prone area in Florida, and even in areas where you don't typically receive flooding. This could be one of those events where you do receive flooding for the first time in a long time, because we could see up to 10 inches of rain with this storm, which is definitely something to prepare for throughout southern Florida. Now, I'm taking a look at the ensemble members. You see that the GFS model isn't really expecting much strengthening. The blues represent winds equivalent to 30 to 40 knots, which is equivalent to tropical storm force strength, but it's mostly towards the weaker end of tropical storm strength. And you do see that it does strengthen as it moves northeastward, mainly due to baroclinic influences, but it stays for the most part. Most of the ensemble members maintain this storm to stay offshore. And now the European model has shifted a little bit further southward than before, so most likely this landfall should be anywhere between the southern portion of Tampa, maybe as far south as the tip of Florida, just before the Keys. So definitely keep that in mind throughout the state of Florida for this weekend, because flooding will be likely throughout southern Florida. Now, here's the estimated amount of rainfall you should expect for southern Florida. You see that you should expect up to 10 inches of rain right around Miami and Florida Keys, which is more than enough to cause a major flooding threat. And this rain a lot of the time should fall at a very fast clip, so flash flooding is certainly a major concern for the southern portion of Florida. And you see this heavy rain extends as far north as West Palm Beach, Port St. Lucie, Fort Myers is getting involved, and even a little bit of Daytona Beach, and headed into Tampa. You guys are receiving a little bit of heavy rain. So southern Florida, prepare for a major flood threat, because it is likely this weekend. Now, here's my forecasted projected path and strength forecast for Tropical Storm Alex, or what will likely become Tropical Storm Alex. I'm expecting this to strengthen to 45 miles per hour by tomorrow afternoon, most likely, and then it could strengthen to around 55 miles per hour just before landfall. Again, this should strengthen at a very relatively slow clip, so it should probably stay around weak tropical storm strength, and then you see that beyond Florida, though, it does strengthen, and I'm expecting this to strengthen into a hurricane, but thankfully, it's going to be well off the United States coast. Maybe Bermuda definitely needs to pay close attention to this, but this should, for the most part, stay away from the United States beyond Florida, which is definitely good news. So even though this does strengthen, it won't be much of an impact for many people outside of maybe Bermuda, which is definitely some good news. But Florida, pay close attention to a major flooding threat this weekend. But anyways, guys, I thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you want to see more weather content, and I hope you guys all have a great day.